Hey guys, this is my leak. This is the My Taught You podcast. I am back with another podcast. I know you guys are thinking, what is she doing? But today I am doing this podcast on competition. I have my friend and former coworker, Ahyiana Angel, on the podcast. I think you guys are going to really enjoy this. We worked together over a decade ago. Ahyiana Angel is the founder of Maisie Media, a podcast network curated for women, and the host of the Switch, Pivot, or Quit podcast. A traditionally published author, Ahyiana is a seasoned executor who eventually blocked out the world's ideas of success, quit her highly coveted position at the NBA, which we're going to talk about, moved to London, and traveled the world. She followed her passion in writing to find her purpose through encouragement. Mastering the art of noteworthy ideation, Ahyiana taps into her more than 12 years of professional business marketing experience to lend her thoughts on professional development, digital marketing, contemporary brand styling, and more. However, Ahyiana enters her zone of genius when speaking to audiences about any of her four P's: publicity, publishing, personal development, and podcasting. She has a ton of accolades. I consider her a friend. Ahyiana, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here. Excited to chat.
I am too. I'm still technically out on maternity leave.
Right.
So recording from home and just realized I didn't turn the AC on. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to cook doing this. So, okay, I'm all set. So today, Ahyiana she called me the other day and we were having just this fantastic conversation. And the whole thought of just like competition came up. And I was like, Ahyiana, we got to talk about this on a podcast. So we're going to be talking about competition. And so I found a quote of a not so good article. I did not love this article, but I did love this quote. It says, "Life without competition is life without progress, a static society where the cream does not rise to the top because there would be no goals and no desire to march to the different drumbeat and take something farther than it's ever been taken before." Today, Ahyiana and I are going to talk about how we met as the only two Black women at our job and building a relationship as confidants versus competing amongst a sea of people that didn't look like us. We're going to talk about how our careers took a turn since we met back in 2006 or 7. I can't remember, Ahyiana. You're going to have to tell me.
I think it was 2006.
Okay,
Yeah.
2006. We're going to talk about making a switch, pivot, or quit, which Ahyiana is known for with her podcast. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about prepping for change. Do you even really know how to compete? Understanding that competition doesn't mean kill or constantly compare, and how making it hard for other women to win does not make you a winner by default. Hello. I love when you wrote that, Ahyiana. It's like, I really, really want to spend some time on that. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk, we have some listener questions, which were phenomenal. I wish we had time to answer them all. But Ahyiana, so let's tell them how we met, because you're saying 2006, which means your memory is probably better than mine.
I know it was 2006 because I remember 2005 was like a pivotal year for me. It was like, okay, you start feeling that anxiety. I'd been in my career for a couple years. I was working at the
Okay.
Game Show Network, which was like cable entertainment. Love the people
Mm-hmm.
there, love the environment, but I sort of fell into that position. It was a position in PR that I took as an internship that they extended because they liked me, and they just said, "We are going to keep you on as long as you'll stay on," and it was paid. So I
Oh,
stayed there
wow.
for yeah, so I stayed there for 3 years. They found a position for me in marketing. I was an executive assistant, head of marketing. I was her assistant, but the thing that I loved about her was she allowed you to work on anything you wanted to work on. She told me, "I know you have a lot to offer, so whatever you want to work on within the scope of marketing, feel free." So I worked on promotions, campaigns, tours, all kind of stuff, just fresh out of school, and that was beautiful. But my focus was PR. I really wanted to expand myself and my knowledge in PR. So that's when I found this PR position available at the former company we used to work at. And that was a PR agency. And I knew that if I really
Mm-hmm.
wanted to take my career further, I had to work for an agency because all the jobs that I was finding, they all said you need agency experience. So
Agency experience.
yeah,
Yes.
that's key. That's key. So I had a former colleague who had worked at that particular agency, and she told me about a job available. But she told me the honest truth. She said, "This person is difficult." She said
Mm-hmm.
that. And then this
Right.
goes full circle to how you and I met, because then
Yes.
at the top of the year, actually, that's when, and I should have known that this was going to be a beast of a job, because I came in right before the holidays and they wanted me to start right after. So I like started right after January 1st. It was like crazy. And that's when you and I
Okay.
met in the
Okay.
elevator.
So this is okay. So I'm going to pick it up from here, you guys. So I have been working at this particular agency for, I want to say at least a year at that point,
Yeah.
maybe by the time you started. So I had been
Hmm.
working there already. And I was the only black girl there. There was another girl there who was mixed race, but I felt like I was the only, like, maybe let's just say sister girl
Yeah. She didn't really
there.
identify like that, let's
Right.
say.
She
Yeah.
didn't identify like that. Yeah. So I felt like that. So I was like elated when I saw, like when I tell you that for the whole year that I had been there, that nobody had come in to interview. Like there was no
Mm.
woman of color that had even come in for as much as an interview. I don't even think there was like a FedEx person of color, like a woman of color that come in. Like I just didn't see black women.
Right.
So when I saw you, I was like, girl, hello. I don't even know you, right? I'm like, girl, okay, what are you doing? What are you
Hmm.
doing here? And you're like, I'm interviewing. And I was like, with. And when you
Hmm.
told me, I was like, I caught her at the elevator and I was like, I'm just going to say,
Right.
I don't know. Like, I mean, if I can be fair, like I definitely would love to work with you here, but your girl is wild.
Hmm.
And at an agency during that time, I don't know what they're like now, just because I think social media changes things. Like I feel like things were more of like a secret, and you had to like read these books, and there were like myths of how things were in Hollywood agencies. But there it was wild in there. Like
It
I
was.
there were agents or publicists who like threw books at assistants.
Yeah.
There was like yelling and screaming. And it was just like, I knew the girl whose job you were taking, and I liked her. And I was just like, she's mad cool.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I've never worked with this woman, but I heard she's crazy.
Hmm.
So long story short, I tee you up because that's what we do for each other. Hey girl,
Right.
let me tell you
Right.
something. You get the job, you get there, and what did you think of your experience there? Because I've mentioned you on the podcast, believe it or not. You probably don't know, but
No.
I mentioned you. So everybody on my podcast knows I've talked about a girl that I work with who had her headphones at work. And so I was like, this is her.
That was
Where
me.
I'm like, sis, we can't do that.
And it's
You're like,
so
okay.
funny because, like, I knew I had already been like introed from multiple directions to how this woman was. So I was like, I gotta come
Hmm.
in here with my game face on, and I cannot let her get to me. And then
Right.
also, we worked. The way it was set up, you were out in the open, but it was just like always
Yes.
so much going on. And
Yes.
also, let's remember this: this was a completely new environment for me. When I went back
Okay.
and visited my old company that I left, because I would go over there for lunch sometimes, they were like Disneyland, and this was like
Okay.
I don't even know, Nightmare from Elm Street. Okay, it was
Okay.
like
Okay.
two different worlds. So these people were so nice and so supportive and so welcoming, and then over here it was like to get a trade magazine, you
Hmm.
had to like fight. You had to be the first
Yes.
person there in the office. Now, mind you, this is an office full
I
of
told them
people,
about that.
yeah,
Yes.
who need these magazines, need these trades, yet there's only a set of three that come to the entire office. Wow.
Yes.
So
Right.
yeah,
There's like 23 people who need 3 magazines,
right.
and the person who got them is the person who showed up first.
Yep.
So you had girls coming in, like even though your boss may not have come in until like 10, you want a mag, you need to get there 6:37.
Yeah. As soon as they're being delivered. So yeah,
You gotta get paid for that.
this was a new world for me, and I appreciated, the things that our conversations that we had, the things that you would say, and because number one, you had been in this world longer than I had, and number two,
Yeah.
you know how sometimes there's just things that you don't know. And so
Mhm.
when you pulled my coattail about the earphones and everything, I was like, okay, I'll wear one. It was
That's she was y'all, that's what she did. She was like, "I will take out one headphone." I'm just because my whole thing is that I had been there and I was like, I'm telling you, you're not ready. Like you ain't seen nothing like this.
Mhm.
Like this is intense. And I felt like you're gonna catch the real gems. Like I felt like not only did I learn a lot just in the work that I was doing,
Right.
but I learned a lot in observation, like
True.
just overhearing. And so I was just like, you want to be always paying attention
Mhm.
because it's going down. Like it was just high octane. Like there were no like I in the time that I worked there, I can't even I can't I think I may have gone to lunch like maybe in the couple of years, I probably went to lunch like maybe four times, four or
Yeah.
five times tops in
Yeah,
years.
yeah, yeah. Because that was
Yeah.
the environment, and I remember having to tell my friends, we would always make dinner plans after work. We would always do stuff, and at a certain point, they got tired of me being late. And I finally had to
Mm.
tell them, I said, "You know what, you guys, this job that I have now is not like my previous job. My schedule, my time is no longer my own. If I have to stay late and that means I come to dinner late, it's because I'm taking care of my business and my priorities. And right now, this is what I have to do." And they understood once I stated it like that and let them know what was actually happening instead of just being like showing up like the flaky friend who never gave any explanation and context as to why I was late. But you're right about, the breeding ground that we were in, because there
Yes.
was so much to be learned, and that is what I will say about that experience. Now, you guys, don't get it twisted. I wasn't listening to music with my headphones all the time. I definitely was
No.
clued in to what was going on, and there was a
She
lot to
was.
be learned. There was a lot to be
But I
learned.
was just shocked. I was
Yeah,
like, I was so like in line. I was fully drinking the Kool-Aid and
yeah.
on board. I was
And
like, girl, what are
And
you
I
doing?
wasn't, and I wasn't. But you know what? That's one thing I've learned about myself. I've never been the Kool-Aid drinker. I'm
Mm.
observant, and so I pay attention to what's going on, and I do what works for me. And I'm not going
Yep.
to make myself unhappy or uncomfortable. And I'll tell you guys a quick story too about that discomfort, because this woman was challenging, as we said. But when I look back at this experience, it was one of the best experiences because it showed me what
Wow.
the real world was like and could be like.
Yep. Yep.
Nobody cares about you. They don't care about your feelings, and things can be very cutthroat, especially in the world of entertainment. So quickly, I'll tell you this. You might remember this story, Riley. So we had to get these packages out. We had to get these packages out.
I feel like I do.
Yeah, you're going to about the end. So we had to get these packages out. This woman was such a nightmare that what she did was she told me we have to get all these packages out by like the end of the day, right? We dealt with DHL then, and so she said, "You got to get them out." And I said, "Okay." Well, next thing I know, her door is closed. Her door is closed for the majority of the day. Now,
She was always like that.
yeah, and what am I supposed to do? I know you're not in there doing anything of significance. So in any case, the end of the day starts approaching, and I'm freaking out because this is one of those situations you've never been in it before, so you don't exactly know what the right or wrong answer is. But I knew that she was so much of a nightmare and a terror that if I didn't get those packages out, that was going to be a problem. So what I did was I said, "There's a master key at the front desk." So her door was locked. I had already knocked on
Mhm.
her door. I had already tried and made attempts. And she said, "I'm busy. I'm on the phone. Come back. I'm busy." And it just was like, what am I supposed to do? She knows she gave me this task. So I politely went to the front desk and got the master key and went and said, "Tap, tap" on the door, then proceeded to unlock the door, come in, grab what I needed to finish the packages, and then close her door back and left. She was livid, livid. You hear
I re-
livid. But the
I
only
remember
thing,
this.
yes, the only thing she could complain about though was that I came into her office. She could not get mad that I did not send those packages because those packages went out. So at the
You
end of the day,
said so
I did my job. You know.
correct.
Hmm.
But yeah, she was hot. But she would do that all the time, like give out tasks. That's what I knew prior that she would give out these tasks, like I need you to do this and this needs to be done. And then she would be needed for something and then she would just like hole up in her office. And it's like, okay, how are we supposed to get this done today?
Yeah. So you were definitely like my bright spot within that company, and my sanity too, because I remember just going to your desk and we would just like chatting. I'm like, girl, oh my God, today.
Yes.
Or we'd be
And this
outside
was
talking.
yes, we would go outside, and our thing that we would do is like the internet was just coming out. I mean, like kind of just becoming a place for PR to be popping.
Right.
And so this is back when people still bought CDs. And so we would take turns, us and another person, we would take turns buying new music on Tuesdays because new CDs used to come out on Tuesday. Whoever's turn it was would buy all the new music, and then we would all like we would burn it, and then it would be
Hmm.
like, okay, we got all the new music. And so it was awesome having you there. I was so glad that you were there. And so I really that's the point that we were talking about, what are your thoughts on that could have taken, our relationship could have not happened,
True.
had I viewed you as competition or, vice versa. And so I think my personality is always collaboration or like looking out for. I mean, it's why I've been doing this podcast for as long as I have, because it was just I'm always the type of person that's like, whatever I know, I want to share with you, And so I never felt any kind of way about sharing whatever I knew. And I remember like there were only so many things that you were doing just based on the kind of accounts that you were on, but I was doing all kind of stuff like late night shows and stuff. And just I want to go on the record and say I loved my boss. I really I really
Right.
did. She was I to this day I feel like I owe a lot of my career to her. Like I learned a lot. It was hard, but
Hmm.
she was decent. She
Right.
was decent to me, and she was kind to me, and she made sure that I learned a lot. So but we have some letters that talk about this. Have you come across any kind of situations where you've been things were the opposite, or and you were like surprised, or have you pretty much always felt that scoop up, let me look out for you?
I will say that I think the reason that our relationship developed the way that it was because we're two of a kind in that way. We both look out for
Mhm.
people, and I realize that not everybody does that. And I have been in situations where, you realize like, oh, like you don't really care. Like you don't really
Mhm.
care like
Mhm.
what happens to me or anybody else. And I understand that sometimes that's the nature of the beast with business, but I will say that fortunately, I've been in more situations with people that have a collaborative attitude, that want to work together and things of that nature versus people that want to backstab and want to, like, try and tear other women down, especially. I remember when I first started at the NBA, another publicist at the same, she had started maybe like a couple months before me. We collaborated and got together and we started doing like editor lunches together,
Okay.
and that was encouragement for both of us because we were both newer to New York and to this sports space and trying to get stories outside of the sports pages. So this was sort of like a comfort zone for us to both work together and try and achieve this common goal. But yet we weren't going to get judged off of what we did together. It was what we could produce individually. But by coming together, I felt like it helped us to be stronger in what we did and what we executed on day to day.
Right. But I guess sometimes there are moments where I think I saw something you posted on Instagram and I don't remember for sure. It was just about like people who may feel like they're on the outside and they want to like pick your brain. They want to like ask you a ton of questions. And I've been on both sides of the fence where it's like, I do consider myself a resource and I want to be there, but there is some work that needs to be done as well. So it's like you and I connected because you had done your work to get in the room. And so what is that? Is there a fine line with some of that? Like, do you have some thoughts on that?
I do. I do think that there is a fine line because there are people that I engage with who don't pay me money to pick my brain, right?
Okay.
A lot of times it's the approach, it's the origin of the relationship, things of that nature. And then there's other people who blatantly will approach a situation. You can tell they haven't done their research. You can tell that they're not very invested, but they just want to come to you and ask you for all the answers. And,
Right.
I'm not trying to be funny when I say things like this, but the reason you have to pay me for my knowledge is because I had to pay for my knowledge, whether it
Mm,
be in my education or whether it be in the turmoil that I had to deal with to learn some of the things that I've had to learn. So, it's fine to try and develop a relationship with someone and then by default, you gain and glean different things from them. But to just go into a situation really trying to extract information, that may not always end up the way that you want it. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with people stating that, hey, I'm not a free for all here, especially when your time is a premium and, you don't have a bunch of time to just sit and chat with people and tell them everything that you know. There's a time to be, generous, and sometimes that comes with speaking engagements and like you said, podcasting and things of that nature where you are giving of yourself and your knowledge freely. So take advantage of
right.
those opportunities. And then when it comes to something deeper, I've had people come in my DMs and ask me very, very specific questions about their situation. And I will be honest with them and say, hey, for this type of feedback on your specific situation, I think you need to book a session, because
Right.
what I give freely is more general, and it helps
Right.
people in different ways. But if you want me to talk to you specifically and dissect your situation and help you strategize, that's a
That's
different thing, hon. That's a different
right.
thing, you know?
Okay, Ayana. So since we met, our careers have taken sort of a different turn. I Some of the questions that we're going to address is going to sort of talk about friendships where one person goes in one direction, one person is like seemingly more successful. Um, just because we're talking about competition, and I know that you have a lot of really like Ayana belongs to a crew, she belongs to a girl gang, and I'm kind of like a more sort of like flying solo kind of person. I have a lot of friends, but I don't belong to a particular crew, if you will. Um, so,
Right.
since I remember when you left and you moved to New York, which you were adamant on doing.
Mhm. Mhm. I was like, "I'm going to make this happen." And I did. And
Hmm.
for me, I felt like it was something I needed to do. I felt like if I didn't do it, I would regret it. And
Right.
at the time, we had an office in New York. So I was able to sort of like transfer within the company, which was weird. But it served the purpose. It got me out there, and that's what I
Hmm.
needed it to do. And from that experience, I then got a job at the NBA and doing PR, doing entertainment PR. And that was a different term for me because although it was still entertainment, it was still heavy sports.
Right.
And that was another really good learning ground. You know, Obviously, I went into that position with experience, but still, that the level that you have to operate at when you work at the NBA is unlike any other. And I didn't know
Okay.
this going in either. It's like the
Okay.
expectation for excellence was super high. Now,
Okay.
it took me about a month and a half, and I think you probably remember this process because you were involved too when I was applying for this job and everything. They made me, like write fictitious press releases and take tests and different
Mhm.
things like that. So I knew that it was competitive, but it's nothing like getting in the door and actually working for one of these premier companies and just having no room for error, like no room for error in anything
Right.
you do, even as
Now
small as sending an email.
which is, I mean, that's insane, but also
Yeah.
good.
Mhm.
But I think during the time that you were working at the NBA, I don't think I was I don't think I was working at all. I think, or maybe I was assisting Kim
You
from Real Housewives of Atlanta. What was I doing?
eventually, so when I first moved to New York, you were still at the agency, and
Okay.
then you eventually left there to work with Travis.
Right.
And then and I remember that being an exciting time for you because it was I think looking back, it was the beginning of you venturing out on your own and
Yes.
not having sort of that safety net of, everything's going to be okay every 2 weeks no matter what because Travis was an artist. know,
Right.
and although
Right.
you were supposed to be guaranteed a check, you never know when it comes to artists, and just that world is slightly
Temperamental.
different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So I think that was really your first entryway into just sort of like this unknown and taking
Yeah.
a chance. And I remember us actually talking about you deciding to take that position. And then from there, I remember our conversations about you moving to Atlanta. And I personally was already in New York. So I was like, that's a great idea. Yes, you
Right.
should
Really?
move. You know, everybody should move, you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
And
And then
then eventually you were assisting Kim, which was interesting. And I was still at the NBA.
you were.
Mind you, I spent 6 years at the NBA. So you did a lot of transitioning while
I
I was just
did.
at the desk on Fifth Ave, you know. And I was also excited for all these twists and turns for you because, you know, it was you taking chances, you know,
Yeah.
and not everybody is bold enough to take chances. And I always say, everything that you do leads you to where you are. And I really strongly feel like if you hadn't done all those things and taken all those chances, you wouldn't be right here where you are right now,
Wow. You
especially if you had stayed in LA, you know?
Oh, definitely, definitely. And so this is the thing is that so you I remember from, from the time I met you at the agency, from the time you moved to New York and things got shady. And then it was like, you were in this transition period of like, okay, where am I going to land? And I remember us talking because I remember at one point, was it like a gospel thing, like some gospel PR you were doing at one point?
It was between the NBA and a gospel record label. Yeah, well, it
Okay.
was like
Yeah.
under a major record label. I can't remember, but it was their gospel division, and that was the two jobs I had to choose between. Yep,
Yes,
you're
yes.
right.
So I remember through all of this, I'm talking to you, and I was at a point in my life where I could have been viewed as not on the same level as you or doing something less than you, but I never allowed myself to feel that way. Like I was
Mm.
so excited for you to do. I mean, the NBA was going to be the look of all looks, right? That was going to basically that was going to be like, okay, you're being shady to me, like that was going to smash everybody, everything, cuz the thing about it is that we were friends, like any ex boo, like, I really was
Mhm.
like rooting for you. Like I really wanted you to shine, and the wonderful thing is you got the job. I remember how difficult it was, but even still, you connected me with someone that you had met that was working at TNT, who, at the time, I think I may have still been assisting Kim or had maybe started doing like some freelance work, but she ended up becoming one of my close friends, and she has since
Mhm.
gotten a ton of promotions. I think I want to have her on the podcast at some point too.
Good
But
idea.
it was just, yes, it was just all this sort of like mutual support. And so I don't, I never felt envious of what you were doing.
Mhm.
I loved. I'm like, did I come stay with you in New York at one point? I feel like I did.
Yes,
Did I?
yes, you came a
Yes.
few times, yes, and
Yeah.
you used
And
to
it was
be up at the butt crack of dawn, and I was like, "What the hell is wrong with you?" And that's when I really realized that your work ethic was crazy. And you know what I remember? One of the times I came to Atlanta, I think it
Mhm,
was when you were in your old place, and you were saying
mhm,
to me, like, "I just got lucky, with everything that happened to me." And I really felt
mhm.
passionately like I had to correct you and say, "But no, you didn't." You know, like timing could
Yeah.
have been on your side, industry
Yes.
could have been on your side, because I think Instagram played a big role,
Yes, it did.
as it did for a lot of people's businesses and the
Yeah.
trajectory of them. But your work ethic was crazy. And nobody can take
Yes.
that away from a person. And that makes the difference. That makes the difference.
Yeah.
So I remember those times where you were hustling then. You were
Yeah.
hustling then. You were making it happen. You're like, I'm coming to New York, da da da. I need to stay with you, da da da. And this is what I'm gonna be doing. I'm like, okay, girl, do what you gotta do. you know?
Yeah, 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 and I think, you did notice that, like, and then I was saying to Ayana, so when she would come visit me, she would be like, "Girl, Ayana," I would tease her about this even back when we used to be working together in LA. Your girl, like, I would try to hit her up and hang out with her on the weekends, and I would call her and she would not answer the phone, and she would text me back at like 10, 11, like, "Girl, I'm just getting up." I'm like, "Ayana, what are you doing? Nobody sleeps till 10 o'clock on the weekends. Come on." So you be like, girl,
So
and I remember
true.
you be at work, you be like, and do not call me at the crack of dawn this weekend.
Exactly. I was so strong about that stuff
Yes,
because
you
coming
got
out of
your
college,
rest.
yeah, I got my rest, but you know what? Like things have changed.
Oh,
Things have changed
really?
because yes, because also I was in an environment where there was safety.
Yes,
On my
yes.
weekends, I knew I had to get up and go to work every day during the week. So my weekends was my time to binge, like I could do
Yeah,
whatever I wanted. There was
yeah.
nobody that had control over my time. And I felt so good about it. And so that was
Right,
me like taking my power back, like doing what I
right.
want on the weekend. But now, I'm accountable for myself. I'm freelance. So my days are different.
Yeah,
My waking hours are different. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
there's still some bad habits, but at the same time, I'm very conscious and aware of what I need to do.
Okay,
That's what
so
matters.
yes. So I want to talk about you had here because you sent me some notes about how to know when it's time for change. But I remember you vacillating at the NBA what seemed like forever.
Yes. Yep.
What
Yeah.
was like what made that so difficult? Was it because it was cushy? Was it because it was sexy? Like what how did you kind of like walk away from that? And then you like went and traveled the world. We ended up meeting up in Paris, but it's just like what
Mhm.
made you decide, you know what? I'm done.
So it was a process, like you said. It was a long time coming. The sexy wore off within like the first 2 years.
Okay.
And I started a side business, doing jewelry. You remember that too, I'm sure. And
Mhm.
so I was doing jewelry, and that was sort of like feeding this creative passion that I had. And I
Okay.
think that was the entry to me realizing that PR was not what I would be doing long term forever.
Okay.
So during that time, I had to figure out, well, how am I going to make this jewelry thing really work for me? And when I decided that that's not what was going to work with for me and be the catalyst to me, going out on my own in whatever way that looked like, I started then racking my brain to figure out, okay, what am I going to do next? And that's that big question that most people have when they're entering that space of making a switch, pivot, or quit. It's like, what am I going to do next? What
Right.
can I do? What am I qualified to do? So I really started taking a lot of classes outside of work, doing workshops, participating in things. Like I took acting classes, I took
Oh,
sewing classes.
wow.
Yeah, I was doing everything I could to figure out what I was really going to gravitate to next and what I was good at.
Mm,
What could I pull out of myself? What could I find? And throughout that process, I started really tapping into and realizing that writing was one of my strengths because obviously you have to be a decent writer to be a well-rounded publicist.
yes.
So, yeah, so and I knew that like creative writing was a thing for me.
Okay.
So I started to really tap back into that. Then I started reading books about writing. And I
Okay.
had this story that I wanted to write when I first moved to New York, but I got distracted. Life gets in the way,
Yep.
things happen, you just never get back to it. So when I was really in that process and journey of making my switch, pivot, or quit, I said, I need to look back into this writing thing and see what it has for me. So
Okay.
I decided that I was going to give it my all. I was going to make an effort and write this book. And I said, my only option here is to get traditionally published. I am not
Okay.
going to self publish. I want to be traditionally published because I'm going into a new industry and I felt like, you got to stake your claim. You got to make your name known. It has to, you have to have some bang when you come in. So that was my plan. But I was still working when I wrote that book. I was still
Okay.
working. So I was spending my nights and my weekends writing that book. And believe it or not, speaking of what time I would get up, I was getting up an hour before I needed to go to work every morning during the week to write. And then I
Wow.
write when I get home.
That's
Yeah, because I
amazing.
knew I had to sacrifice. Yeah, I
Yeah.
had to sacrifice to make this happen.
Yeah.
And and so then I ended up realizing that this could actually be a thing.
Okay.
And I went to this workshop in Maryland and realized, okay, I can actually do this. And so when I finally told them that I was leaving, there was shock and surprise
Mhm.
because I had been looking for other positions, but God has a funny way of working things out and showing you things. And
Mhm.
throughout that process, I realized you might be going in the wrong direction. because at
Mm,
first I was really trying to find another PR job
yeah.
and it just wasn't working out, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I wasn't used to being in a position where things weren't working out. Usually the jobs that I applied for and I wanted, I got them. So I was like,
Right.
what is this? You know?
Right.
And I think it was God, the universe, however you want to look at it. I think it was the way of saying, this might not be the direction for you.
Right.
Let's take some time and let's look at some other things. And that's how everything unfolded with writing. So when I finally told my managers at the NBA that I was leaving,
Mhm.
it was like shock and everything. But the final straw for me was realizing that I could never achieve any type of work life balance that I wanted. And I
Mm.
couldn't accomplish some of the things and the greatness that I felt was in me. I couldn't accomplish that by sitting there on Fifth Ave at that desk. I knew
Wow.
it.
You knew
I
it.
just knew it.
And that was the
Yeah.
thing that I really admired about you. Like when you decided that you were leaving and then you traveled the world in such a by yourself in such a unique way. And I remember when you we met up in Paris and I think I was like, stay with me. And then you
Mm-hmm.
honey, you packed your bag and you was like, I'm headed to Morocco. I was like, oh. And here, mind you, this was my first time ever being in Paris or anything like that. And you were just like, you had stayed in hostels. And I just was like, dang,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that
Mm-hmm.
was just so brave and so amazing. But I feel like a lot of people are like kind of doing that now. And eh, I'm pretty
Mm-hmm.
sure if can you tell me this is completely off topic, but I feel like this is something that needs to be addressed. Because I feel like people are doing it almost like maybe finding themselves, searching for themselves. Can you give us one plus and one minus about your deciding to do that?
Sure. So the plus was it was an experience of a lifetime. I learned a lot about myself. Although people show you this lifestyle of, let's say, laptop lifestyle, this I did this before this was a trend though, before this was a
Right.
thing.
Yes.
And and I didn't have anybody to look at as an example. I didn't have anybody to be envious of, anybody
Okay.
to follow on social, any of that. So for me, it was a beautiful experience. It was a learning experience, but it was also an isolated experience at times too. I remember being in Madrid and I felt like very, very alone because not only was I traveling alone, I couldn't speak Spanish.
Right.
And I felt like everybody was like, "Oh, if you don't speak Spanish, like I can't talk to you." So it was like, and then I was in this little cute hotel room. I just felt so alone. So
Mm,
I learned a lot about myself on that journey, but I also will say that the drawback was the sort of disconnect from family and friends.
mhm.
You're on a totally different time zone and then most times you're trying to catch up. Holidays may pass, things are happening, and you're like, oh. And if you were there, you would have. If I was home, I would have wished I was in Paris.
Right.
But being not there, it made you feel like, oh, I'm missing out. So that was sort of the drawback, I think, for me. But there's also larger drawbacks that I think people don't really address. Some people try to address it to give more background and substance to what they're doing on social media. But I think there is this culture of entrepreneurship that's glorified, laptop lifestyle that's glorified. And I think when it all comes down to it, you have to do what's best for you. And the best thing that you could do is really start to tap into and understand your person.
Mhm.
Because although you think all of these things would be great for you, you don't really know what happens outside the Instagram post,
Right.
what it really looks like. And I remember us talking about this because it was like I was staying in hostels. Most people were like, I wouldn't stay in a hostel. But
Right.
then I was taking a picture in front of the Eiffel Tower or on a camel in Morocco. You wanted
Right.
to do that, but you
Right.
wouldn't want to stay in a hostel. Well, that's what I had to do to get those great images and to have those experiences. So you have to really understand the good and the bad with the choices that you're making and understand what you're willing to sacrifice, really.
Right. Okay. So we have talked for a while and haven't really dug into the whole competition thing, but you said something that you want people to understand that competing doesn't mean kill or constantly compare. Can you elaborate on that for me? Like what, you meant when you said that?
Sure. So I'm thinking of obviously social is so prevalent in all of our day-to-day lives
Absolutely.
and all of our worlds,
Mm-hmm.
right? So a lot of times when this word competition comes up, it's surfacing from a space of like nastiness, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And everybody thinks that somebody else is subbing them, whether it's like subtweeting, sub posting, or this or that, or
Mm-hmm.
if she's doing something similar to me, she got it from me, or all of these things, right?
Right.
And I just wish that more people would tap into the fact that to compete, it doesn't mean that you have to obliterate the person that you think is competition. It
Okay.
doesn't mean that you have to be nasty to them. It doesn't mean that you have to kill them, like they can't exist in your world.
Right.
No, it's healthy to have people that you can look to the left or the right and they exist in your world and they look similar to you, but you can take notes and take cues from what they're doing, and they can take notes and take cues from what you're doing. Because what you don't realize is the people that you're competing with, you guys are making each other better. They're looking at you and you're looking at them. Please
Mm-hmm.
know that. That's
Right.
just the reality of it.
I
And you don't have to go ahead.
No, no, no. I was going to say that I always say that competition makes a category viable, right? So if you're the
Hmm.
only person that's doing e-courses, then how do we know that e-courses are a viable thing, that it's a viable
Right.
category? Or if you're the only person that's doing, selling hair, then,
Hmm.
how do we know that selling hair is a viable category? But when there's all types of different, you give people choices and options, then it sort of forces you to either get better or to, like I say, figure out what your point of difference is. And so you
Right.
can, when I first started podcasting, there, somebody will probably contact me and be like, I was podcasting before you were podcasting. I didn't know of anybody who was podcasting the way that I was, almost in like like
Right.
a diary style, if you will, and that was, I
Hmm.
started doing that 7 or so years ago. And then all of a sudden, I went from being like the only person doing what I was doing to all of these people doing various types of podcasts. And it never really, like, I was just like, okay, there are times when
Yeah.
sometimes people, I will say this because I am a competitor. A lot of people
Hmm.
will reach out to me to have me be on their podcast, and I felt like to try to almost to like sort of like drag my audience over to them, and I just didn't think that was fair.
Mm.
It's just like
No.
I can't always be on all these different podcasts when I also podcast, right? That would be like,
Right.
Oprah Winfrey going on every single daytime show all the time and not focusing on her thing. And so that's the thing that sometimes when
Hmm.
I tell people like I can't be on your show, it's not because I don't want to be, because I do love doing shows. It's just that I do also have to record my own shows, And if I'm interviewing every day of the week, I'm only able to at this point record once a week. So it's like, do I record?
Hmm.
Do I record my podcast or do I do yours?
Right. And you know what? I think there's a important point in there too, in that, I asked Gary Vee, I was like, what should I do to grow my podcast? Right. Because I just felt
You
like I
had it.
needed
When
to
did
ask
you
him
meet
some
him?
kind of question. Oh, I went to this event
Which is what
and
she does,
he was the
y'all.
keynote speaker.
Ayana goes
Yeah.
to events, okay? Don't nobody go to more events than your girl. So if you like you get out. Meanwhile, I'm just like, I'm like, what Gary? I'm like, where you see Gary V?
Right, right. But that's the beauty in it.
Yeah.
We've always been like this.
Yes.
You've always been a little bit more low key, and I've always
Yeah,
been like
you
out and about.
sharpshooter. She's out and about, and me. Meanwhile, I'm on Gary V's mailing list. Somebody reached out to me to be on
Hmm.
his mailing list, but I'm like, I don't really go out. I'm not that kind of networker, which would probably surprise people that I don't go out in the way that
Hmm.
I've always admired that about you. Like you will have your own networking event. You will go to something. Meanwhile, I'm just like, Gary V gonna have to call me. He gonna have to find me and call
Right,
me.
right. Right, right.
Okay.
And I felt like I needed to ask him something pertaining to my situation specifically. So
Yep.
I was just basically saying like, okay, what's your advice on growing within the podcasting space? And he's like, get on everybody's podcast that you can.
Really.
And see, I think that's great. Yes. And I think that's great advice for someone who doesn't already have a market share within the space.
Mm-hmm.
But for you, you don't need to be on people's podcasts to bolster your presence within the space because you've already been doing it for a while. And
Right.
then you have this main business that's a successful business that people can look to and say, well, she must know something about something.
Right.
So if she has a podcast, I'm gonna go and listen to it. So there's two things that are already working to where, being on someone else's podcast is almost like a treat
Yeah.
versus a necessity.
Right.
And for some people trying to grow in this space who are newer to this space, it's a necessity because it's one of your tools that you will use to grow.
Right.
But you have to understand the difference in people. So, like, if I pitch someone to be on my podcast and they pass, and let's say it's like, I don't know, somebody who's, sort of untouchable in a way in
Mm-hmm.
terms of they don't do a lot of interviews. My feelings can't be hurt. I can't get mad. This person doesn't need to do my podcast.
Correct.
And I think that's the thing that needs to be established. I don't need to do it, but if I do it, great. But I don't need to do it to grow.
Right.
And people, if they really want to hear from you, they can just come over to your
That's really it. That's really it. Yeah.
podcast.
So
Mhm.
that's, I've been in situations where, I think there's competition is healthy. There are some
Yes.
people who have done what we do. And, in terms of my business, Curlbox, and I know that like people are like, oh, um, how do you feel about people coming in and say doing quote unquote boxes, right? And so I would always say that like I didn't first of all, subscription is not new. It kind of just was revisited, like CDs used to be a thing back in the day or records or whatever. So what I'm doing
Right.
isn't new. And I do believe that having, somebody else also doing it makes the category viable. What I didn't like is I didn't like when people just straight up, in my opinion, stole everything that we were doing. Right. So I
Right.
never got any other subscription box because I really wanted to make sure that I created something that was completely authentic to like my taste and my likes. And so we have that like the imagery that we do every month. Like
Mhm.
I did that and then I started seeing people doing that and there's some things like the way we were doing things people were doing, and I will admit there were times where I would kind of just be like ugh, frustrated, but there's also something
Right.
about that would like light a fire in me to be like, now you playing with me. So now you're just about to send me to another level, So I'm getting ready to go to the next level. So excuse me, I do think that competition is good and
Yes.
necessary. So
Yes.
you also said that healthy competition is about awareness, stepping it up, showing up within your space and growing into being the best version of yourself.
Absolutely.
As a small business owner, how many of you hate dealing with all of the tedious admin and paperwork? Don't worry, you're not alone. You need to set aside that frustration you're feeling because there's a more enlightened way to look at the situation. Let's look at it this way. If you're still managing to deal with your paperwork on your own by using a spreadsheet, then you're going to absolutely crush it when you start getting help from FreshBooks. You see, FreshBooks has created ridiculously easy to use cloud accounting software for self employed people who would rather spend their precious time building their businesses than dealing with mountains of paperwork. One thing I really love about FreshBooks is that you can send clean and professional looking invoices in about 30 seconds. And with literally 2 clicks, you can set yourself up to receive payments online. We all like doing that. For your free 30-day unrestricted trial, just go to freshbooks.com/mytaughtyou and enter my taught you in the how did you hear about us section. So to really drill down on this whole competition topic, because I know we kind of went in a few different directions, we are going to really get into these listener questions. We have 3, and I'm super curious to hear your thoughts on these, Ahyiana. So
Let's get into
without
it.
further ado,
Mhm.
here we go. I'm having some issues with my circle of friends. I'm starting to use the term loosely. I started my own women's boutique 2 years ago while working full time and raising my beautiful daughter. My busy schedule has taken a toll on a few of my friendships. I've noticed a few of my friends have distanced themselves from me, even though I go out of my way to make it to their events. I have made it to all except one. It seems it's never enough. When I show up, no one really seems to care that I am there, and they make comments like, "Wow, I can't believe you made it. You're always so busy." I rarely talk to the girls on a day to day basis, so I'm assuming they are gathering this information from my social media. Although I am busy, I never let it stand in the way of family and friends, so I'm not sure why it's constantly mentioned when I do, she put in caps, show up for them. If we do dinner and I order a salad, they make comments like, "Of course she orders a salad. She works out every day." While I am proud of my ability to juggle it all, I certainly do not push my lifestyle on others, and I am not one to talk about myself much, nor do I enjoy it. It seems somehow me being me has struck a nerve with a few of them, and it's spreading through the whole bunch. I talked to my mom about it, and she thinks I may have just outgrown them. They do not have the same things going on for themselves, but I refuse to think they are jealous of me, like she keeps saying. How do I let my fellow sisters know that this is not a competition and I want to see all of us win? I love them and I want to try to be a better friend if I can, but I'm not sure they even want me to. I have some mixed thoughts, but I'm super curious to know. I'm super curious to know what you think about this one, Ahyiana, because I feel
Uh-huh.
like you kind of belong to like a girl group. You have a little girl gang,
Mm-hmm. Yep. Fab
not a
five
little
plus
one, a
one.
big one.
Yeah.
Fat Five plus one. And I've always been kind of a solo roller. I mean, I got girls, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm not like a part of a girl group.
Mm-hmm.
And my thoughts are sort of all over the place with this one, but I want to know what you think, and I wonder if we'll even agree on this.
Right. I think there's a lot of layers to this, right? And
Agreed.
I think that, on face value, when you first read this, it could come off as, wow, she's sort of being shunned by her friends.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you really take a deeper look at it, and you pick up on the way that she's presenting some of the things
Mm-hmm.
and the way some things are actually being said, um, saying this out of love, honey, if you're listening,
Mm-hmm.
I think you gotta look in the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
It starts with you,
Yep.
because I think that there are some key things that you're doing or not doing, and but you're not really ready to take accountability. And a part of being in a healthy friendship is being accountable for your actions or lack of action.
Yep.
When you can count how many times you showed up for your friends, that makes me think it's a petty party going on. And it's like, well, I showed up for you then and you didn't show up for me. Like, no, we don't need to do that. When we're friends, we just show up for each other because that's what we want to do. We want to support each other. And, when you say things like, maybe they're looking at my social media, well, what are you putting out there on social media? If you're dipping and doing all through the streets, but yet you don't have time for your friends might feel some type of way. They might, you
Mm-hmm.
got to be conscious of those things.
Okay.
Then it's also like when you say things like, oh, I rarely talk to the
Oh
girls on a
gosh.
daily basis,
Mm-hmm.
then it's like you're admitting that your relationship with them maybe has changed a little bit. Maybe you don't make as much time. You know what? I always go back to this episode. Is don't laugh, but you can laugh actually.
Okay. Okay.
It's this episode of Moesha
Mm-hmm.
when Moesha had to be checked by her best friend because it was like, I'm a good friend to you,
Mm-hmm.
but are you a good friend to me?
Yeah.
And a lot of times we don't realize that friendships are a two-way street. And I really didn't realize it until that episode. I was like, oh, wow, that's like a check moment.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this young lady needs to evaluate how she's showing up for people. And this last line to me really says it all. I love them and I want to try to be a better friend. Try. So
Mm-hmm.
that makes me think you haven't been giving it your all, okay? Even though you said you you came to every event but one.
Mm-hmm.
And then you say, I want to try to be a better friend if I can.
Mm-hmm.
That means you're not committed to it, but
Wow.
I'm not sure they even want me to.
Mm.
Okay, a lot of this is in your head. I bet if you actually took an assessment of their feelings and how they feel, they probably don't feel as deeply about you as you think they do in the negative space.
Right.
That's just my thoughts.
Wow, girl. When I tell you, you cut this up. You cut this up. You cut this up. But the thing that I was going to say to this person is that I agree with everything you're saying, Ahyiana. And I wanted her to know that I have been in this space at times, right? Like
Mm.
I've had to
Mhm.
self check.
Right.
Um, I,
We all have.
yeah. So it's like when I first started Curlbox, I was like crazy busy. Um, and the only thing is that I noticed the shift in my friendships, but I wasn't trying to be like, I don't know what happened. It was like
Right.
I just took this deep dive into my business and people stopped inviting me places.
Mhm.
So it was like little by little, the phone calls stopped coming, the invites stopped coming, and you know what?
Right.
People stopped showing up. And something else that like I can admit that I did probably still do and am currently working on is that my life has gotten so big and so grand that I have to work to not out big and out grand my friends. It's like I
Mm.
know that I do it. It's hard to not do it. I don't know why I do it, you know what I mean? But it's like I noticed that
Okay.
about myself. And I
Give
some
us
and
an
I don't
example.
okay.
Give us what do you mean when you say outgrand your friends? Because obviously, we're friends in real life. So I want to
Yes.
know, like, what's something that you feel like, okay, I did too much there, maybe.
It's because sometimes I feel like I have a lot of life experience,
Hmm.
like like having success gives you a ton of access and access
Right.
gives you a ton more of like life experiences. So I can basically chime in on every damn topic. It's like, girl, shut up. It's like I can talk about, I travel a ton. You know what I mean? So it's like I fly a lot. So I know everything about traffic. I know everything about traveling. I know everything about hotels. And sometimes I feel like you don't always have to give all of your freaking advice, my leak, because
Mm.
maybe people don't really care,
Mm.
and you don't have to always let everybody know everything you're doing all the time. And it's a struggle because I'm excited about what I'm doing. I'm also a person that really just loves to share. But I feel like at times it's okay if I just fall back and just shut up and I don't have to share all of my experiences at every time friends are getting together. Does that make sense?
Right.
So it's
Yeah,
like,
it does. But I think a part of that comes from because you're saying that, and I think I can see myself in that too. Because people that are sharers,
yes.
and it's sometimes people take it as, oh, you're a know-it-all,
Mhm.
but a lot of times it's really coming from a place of genuine, I want to help you. I want to tell you what I know. So
Yeah.
maybe you don't make the same mistakes, or maybe you didn't know that. So I'm cluing you in. I don't need
Yeah.
a pat on the back. I just want to share. But I think when you're around the right people, they
Yeah.
also start to understand who you are
Yeah.
and how you work, and they can tell you to shut up with love.
Yeah.
Tej told me, she's like, and she slapped me in the face with this. She's like, Angel, you're always giving your unsolicited opinion, and I
Ooh.
was like, oh,
Oh,
you know,
excuse me. Yeah.
yeah, but I didn't get offended. So you're
Right.
right. Sometimes you can try to give too much information, but
Mhm. About
I
how
think in this,
well everything is going, and
yeah,
that's awesome, you know what I mean? But it's like, that doesn't have to always be the narrative when you're with your friends.
mhm,
It's like, how well life is going, and that doesn't, it's not anything down or dimming your light or anything. It's just like you're shining, you're popping,
mhm,
everybody knows, and you don't have
mhm,
to always do that. And that's something that I feel like I have to work on. And then something else that I wanted to, because I do agree and I do think that this is a moment of of checking, but I also want to share just how normal it is and how often people do it and share the other side for people who also may be doing it is that, you know, you may have some insecurities around people commenting on like what you're eating or whatever. Oh, she ordered a salad because she works out. Sometimes that's just joking and in love, right? So it's like
yes,
everybody kind of teases me because I'm like, I have a friend that's always doing some type of paleo, keto, like, and it's like every time she comes over, I'm like, so what are you not eating today? And it, and it's just jokes, it's
yeah,
just jokes. That's her personality. That's who she is. And, the same can be said
for me, if I'm like, I make my own salad dressing, or, I typically do like my dressing on the side or whatever. And if somebody
Mhm.
comments on it, if we're truly girls, I'm fine with them
Right.
joking like that. But if you're feeling some type of way, and I used to hate for people to ask me like what I did, like, what do you do?
Mm.
And it just was
Mhm.
like, I didn't like it,
Mhm.
regardless of where I was in my life. I didn't like it because I felt like people were measuring me
Yeah.
with the question, which sometimes may be the case, but sometimes, you know what? People are just like, they ain't got nothing to talk about. And it's just like an easy opener. And
Right.
that's like my own issue. And so I went from feeling the need to tell people exactly what it is that I do to just basically saying, I'm an entrepreneur.
Mm.
You know, that's it.
Mhm.
I ain't got
Mhm.
to tell you, oh, I own this or I do that. I just like, oh, I'm an entrepreneur, and I keep it moving.
Yeah. Sometimes it
But
could be that could be your way of simplifying it so that people feel more comfortable in your space. And it's like you said, it's not
yes.
saying, hey, I'm dumbing it down. It's just saying that I don't always have to be spotlight on me. Oh, you want to know what
Mhm.
I do? Let me tell you, honey, darling, I cleared, X amount. Oh, yes, honey.
Darling.
It doesn't have to be the production all the time. So yeah, that's
Right.
true. That's true. Hopefully
Yeah.
she understands where we're coming from, has some moments
Mhm.
of self-reflection, because it could be a part of what she's putting out there. And then
Mhm.
also, if these women are truly in a competitive spirit with her and not happy for anything that she's doing, even she notices this after she changes her behavior or
Mhm.
checks herself a little bit, then maybe they're just not the group for you. Maybe you have actually outgrown them. That's possible
Yeah.
too.
And this
Yeah.
is the other side of it, is that just because you've outgrown your friends doesn't mean that they're competing with you. You feel
Right.
me? Like
Hmm.
they're not necessarily, they may not be doing that. And outgrowing your friends is normal. You know what I mean? I think a lot of times we'll have friends that we have been down with since like elementary school,
Hmm.
and then life just takes a different twist or turn. And it's like sometimes it's not maybe that you outgrow the friendship, but you outgrew like the pace of the friendship, right?
Right.
So it's like there's some people that, once I got to a certain place in life, not even like a success thing, but just like a place where I was really ready to focus all the time.
Hmm.
I, when I got to that place, I couldn't hang out with the friends that maybe I partied all the time with,
Right.
and there's nothing really wrong with that. I just wasn't there.
Hmm.
So I hope that helps. And I hope that, like, because I did agree with Diana, I did feel like I was just like, wow. And sometimes I don't really love when people are like, my friends are hating on me. I'm always like, not always,
Yeah. Yeah. You
not
know what?
always.
Can
Your
we just
friends are not.
go ahead?
Go ahead, girl.
No,
No, no,
I
no.
was just
You.
gonna say, you know what? I just want to spend 2 seconds on, and I got that from you. I just want to
Yeah.
spend 2 seconds on the fact that we have to realize that for some reason in our community, you see a lot of they always hating on me. They can't never
Mm-hmm.
want to see me win. Da, 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 da. This, and that. A lot of times, your account is private. If we're talking about social media, nobody sees
Mm-hmm.
anything you're doing. So nobody's actually
Right.
hating on you because nobody knows what you're doing. Okay, and the
Right.
world is not out to get you. Half the time, the
No.
people that you actually think are hating on you, they don't even care. They don't even know
No.
what you're doing. So we
No.
got to let go of this mentality of competition, especially from a level of we think that every single person that we perceive to be doing better than is potentially hating on us. No, let go of
Mm.
that narrative. It doesn't.
Because you think you're doing better than them, and they
Yes.
might not even see it that way.
Yes, because they might be
You know?
perfectly content with their life and what they're doing, and they're happy. And sometimes when you get to screaming from the mountaintops that everybody is hating on you, it's a telltale sign that you're actually hating on yourself and you're actually very unhappy, and you're looking for reasons to be even more unhappy and put the blame on somebody else.
Uh oh. Not lying though. It's
You know?
true. It's true.
So
And it definitely has to
sometimes,
be said.
yeah, you just got to let go of that. And also, there comes a point where we should outgrow that too. You shouldn't
Mhm.
have people around you where you have to feel like, oh, girl, she just hating on me. No,
Yeah.
you know?
No.
So I just need to
Yeah.
say that.
Okay. All right. I don't disagree. Okay. Next question. Hey, Myleek. I've been feeling competitive towards some of my closest girlfriends over the last year, women I've been friends with for over a decade. here's the core of it. These used to be my single girlfriends I could go out with on a Friday night, my go to girls. And now they're in relationships, serious ones, and I'm still the single one. And so I feel sort of left out now. And I've started to feel a subtle competition. I've used my social media presence to indicate and subtly show that I am busy, thriving, and living a full life, which I'm genuinely doing, but I'm showing it off more as a way of saying, oh, you and your fiance are vacationing in Europe together. Oh, you and your boyfriend are moving in together. It's okay that I'm single. Look how cool my life is. And I can't help but feel like I have to be impressive and show off my life as a way of justifying while I'm still single and all my friends aren't. At the root of it, it seems to be competitiveness, and I hate that I feel this way towards some of the closest women in my life because ultimately I want them to be happy, but I can't help feeling like I'm being left behind. How do I change my perspective on this so I can release these negative feelings? First of all, I really appreciated like the honesty
Oh
of this
gosh,
letter.
me too. I
it
did
it
too.
was so good. It was
Mhm.
so good. But I'm letting you run with this. So I'm curious to know, Ayana, your thoughts on where she's coming from.
Like I said, I echo that. I appreciated her vulnerability in writing this and
Mhm.
really just stating sort of like what her issues are with it. And first and foremost, you are not alone. There are so many single women out here that we all feel like, oh, if I'm not coupled up, then I'm not this and I'm not that. And so many people in society measure your success, your worth on whether you're in a relationship, whether you get married, whether you have children, all those things. So
Yep.
a lot of that is societal pressure, and that's a reality that we're just dealing with. But
Yep.
I think the main thing that you're doing in terms of working on changing your perspective is number one, being honest with yourself about this because
Mhm.
you were honest enough to write
Mhm.
it. The next thing that I would suggest you do, and I'm no therapist, but this is just what I would tell my friend if she said this to me. I would just say, um, I think you should admit these feelings to at least one of your girlfriends who you feel this way
Ooh,
about.
yes.
Could just meet it head on because I think that
Mhm.
that will be like a revelation to this person, probably. And if they have noticed some things in your behavior, it'll make everything make sense. I think it'll bring you guys closer and it will make that person endeared to you in a way that they want to be supportive of you. They want to help you. Maybe they'll start looking around like, I know this guy, I see him every day in my building, at
Mhm.
work. Maybe he's single. Let me try and hook you up. Maybe they'll be more invested in helping you reach that happy. And it doesn't have to be in an annoying way, just more so in a supportive way to say, hey, girl, I understand. Because this is like a lot of unfortunately wasted effort on your part trying to show
Yes.
that you're okay and your life is popping online. Like we all know
And you're not
that's not.
and you're not really okay. Yeah.
Yeah, you
You're not really okay with it.
yeah, you don't wanna wait till you get to a point where you start lashing out at your friends. Bring them in. If these are your real friends and you actually care about them and you know that they care about you, I would really say bring them into what's going on. It's not gonna be easy, but maybe you ask for a girls' night. "Hey, ladies, I know everybody's so busy. Can we have a girls' night on, like, Saturday or something like that?" You have some little vittles and everything, you bring them over,
Mhm.
and you say, "Ladies, I really wanna share something with you." And let your
Mm.
sisters support you so that you don't have to feel in isolation because we're not islands, we don't have to move like we're an
Mhm.
island either. Let people support you, especially in your time of need, because it sounds like you're in a time of need right
Yes.
now.
I just want to chime in and say that, I've talked about this ad nauseum on my podcast
Mm,
about how um, these illusions and these relationship illusions and fantasies are
oh,
displayed on social media, right?
right.
Um, you start to feel like you need to keep up with or actually compete with something that's not even truly like real, right?
Mm,
So it's
mhm.
like, okay, yes, you may see these gorgeous pictures of your friends traveling through Europe together, but what you don't know is that they were up arguing and screaming all night, you know what I mean, the night before,
Right.
potentially, right?
Mhm.
I'm not saying that people can't be happy in relationships, but a lot of times it's like you're competing with a fantasy. You're not
Yeah.
necessarily competing with the reality. And so, I've had people ask me, why do I not share a ton of my relationship online? There's a host of reasons, but one of them is I just don't want to sign up for the, you know, my love life is my life thing,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm. Mhm.
It's like, because my love life is not my life.
Yep.
It's a good time. I am in a happy, healthy relationship, but there's so much more going on in my life, and I don't want to make my relationship be the stuff. It's like, the narrative.
Mhm.
And sometimes I'm going to say this. A lot of times people will share their relationship, and because that's all they have to talk about. You know what I'm saying?
So
That's
true.
that's their accomplishment,
Mhm.
and when you don't view your relationship as an accomplishment, there may not be anything to talk about. So it's just like, you keep living your life, and if you want to show your pictures and all that, that's fine. But just because you meet someone, I hope that you then won't feel the need to show that off on social media, because you're viewing it as a relationship competition and missing the whole relationship, missing what it actually is supposed to be about, right?
Right.
If that is what you really want. It's like, and I think it's totally normal and okay to say, I would like to be partnered. I would like to be in a relationship,
Mhm.
you know.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and take that to your girls. And like you said, people will start looking out for you. And I think that we have to continue to be invested in our friends' love life. Like, I think that, I don't know where I heard or read this, that like a lot of women are single because back in the day, you used to make it your business to set your friends up, and
Mm.
now we just don't do that anymore. And
True.
so I still try. I mean, it's harder for me to set people up because now we live all over the place.
Right.
But I am good for being like, okay, Ayana, where we at?
Right.
Are
No,
we
yes,
dating?
that's
Are we
true.
not?
That's true. You
Are
will
we dating? Are we
definitely
not
get
dating?
a
And
check-in.
I'm like, get back in the game,
Yeah.
because I know
Yeah.
how frustrating it can be, is that you meet somebody, you think it's going to work, and then it doesn't work. And then you just basically take yourself out of the game. And then a year goes by and you're like, nothing is happening. And it's like, you know what? I want you to get back in the game because,
Mhm.
and I believe I've shared this, I had a girl that I didn't even really know her that well. She asked me about my love life. And I was like, oh, I'm busy, I'm traveling, blah, blah, blah. She's like, so, you need to get online and you need to get it popping. And I was just like, oh my God, I can't. And then I did it. I met someone, dated them for a while. And when that didn't work out, you know what? The night that I broke up with him, I reactivated my Tinder account. I'm just
Mhm.
like,
Mhm. Okay.
I gotta
On
stay in the
yeah.
I'm staying in the game. It's like, I'm not going to allow one person or one relationship to taint the fact that I'm I'm in a good place. I've done my personal work and I'm ready to be in a relationship. And finally, on as far as like this, is that maybe maybe you're just not in that same place with your friends right now.
Right.
It looks like everybody's getting married. And I'm not, like, again, I don't want to come across like a hater, but it's like, there will be seasons where it'll seem like all of your friends are getting married, and then you're going to get a little bit
Mm.
older and there are going to be seasons where it looks like all of your friends are getting divorced.
Exactly.
So
That's
just
true.
know that all these engagement pictures and all this stuff is not, all that it seems.
Mhm.
And then, like, some of the behind the scenes things that happens is that a lot of people have these fairy tales, these visions of what they think life is going to be like once they take their engagement photos and once they get married and once they have this baby. And then they have a baby and they're like, I think that's what a lot of depression could, and I'm not a doctor or anything like this, could stem from the fantasy meeting the reality,
Yep.
right? It's
Exactly.
like all of a sudden it ain't that much fun,
Mhm.
and
And you got to
I,
deal with
I
the
I
real
have,
stuff. The real stuff.
oh my
Yeah.
God.
Mhm.
The crazy thing about relationships is, like, I was like, I love my man. I love him. And we get along famously.
Mhm.
I had that baby and I was just like, who are you actually?
Right.
Who are you? you know? And so
Yep.
that's the thing, is that I
Yep.
always just want people to know that, like, it's ebbing, it's flowing, it's changing.
Mhm.
I'm committed, so I'm in there.
Mhm.
But
It's
it's
it's not a
it's
walk in the
nice to
park.
have.
It's just not a
It's
walk in the
not.
park. And that's, I think, what we're
It's not.
sold. We're always sold like these visions of what relationships should look like, but they don't always look how we expect for them to look. And the last thing that I want to offer to the young lady is that, maybe there's also some opportunity here for self growth self-growth in multiple ways. Maybe it's you
Mm-hmm.
growing your relationship with your girlfriends and allowing them to be more of a support system, but maybe it's also growing your relationship with yourself. Maybe there's some work that you still could be doing to prepare you for this partnership and this relationship that you really want. Maybe it's not
Mm-hmm.
happening yet because you're not in the place to receive it. But and there's
Mm-hmm.
also something to be said about the party girl, right? So the guy who may be
Mm-hmm.
entertaining you and thinking like, wow, I really like her. I think I want to take her out. Then he see you all over the gram flexing for your friends in relationships, and he like, oh, but wait, do I want to take her
See?
out? Like she busy, like so you also have to pay
And this is the
attention to the
thing. And this is
messages.
how I feel about him. Yeah, this is the thing. And you know what? Forget him anyway.
Yeah.
And I'm just gonna say that if that's how he feel, then forget him. I do hear what you're saying. There is a guy, there could be the guy that could be like that, like, oh, I'm intimidated. I hate that. I'm
No, me
intimidated by
too.
her because she got a life, she busy. Yes.
Definitely not
But
trying to play into that. What I'm more so saying is make
yes.
space for somebody. So while you front. That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying. If this is not really
Right.
your life, you know what I'm saying? If you sitting up here
Right.
trying to
It's
put
it's okay if you're like, I'm home reading tonight.
yeah, he might want to go read at Barnes and Nobles with you. You know what I mean? You might find a date. Somebody might slide in your DMs
Yes.
if you start keeping it real. I'm just saying.
There you go. There you go. That I do feel. Somebody might slide in your DMs if you're keeping it real, because then it comes off more authentic versus I'm trying to look like I'm popping,
Yep.
which people can see through too.
Yep.
Okay, so that was that, and so I think that, and for real, I'm about to move on, but I want to just say this to you. I did go to therapy because I felt like I struggled with being able to uh, either like establish or maintain a relationship with men.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I am so good at so many things, but when it comes to this, I don't do well. And I feel like it's okay to talk. Like they have therapists who work specifically on relationships, like Dr. Joy, the Black Therapy for Black Girls. She
Yes.
works on breakups, but there are therapists who can actually help you develop the tools to properly communicate what it is you're looking for when communicate what it is you're looking for,
Mm-hmm.
help you learn what you actually want to attract. Because see, that was the thing with me, is that I was going after the guy that I didn't even want. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, and therapy taught me that. So therapy taught me, is like, you know why things aren't really working out, Miley? Because you're experiencing what they call repetition compulsion. You're trying to recreate some trauma in your life. You're trying to change a man in your life that you're not even really attracted to.
Right.
So that had me to be like, so once, therapy being so great, and helped me realize, it's like, let me stop going after the guy that's, so challenging,
Mm-hmm.
and just, trying to like teach this guy a lesson and trying to like let him know whatever the heck. And let me just go after the person that I'm more suitable and more the word I'm looking for is compatible
Compatible,
with.
yes.
And the guy that I was compatible with just didn't really, that person didn't look like what I thought I was supposed to be with.
Mm-hmm.
I had to learn to kind of be open to what I was compatible with, and then not be concerned about what people thought about my actual compatibility.
Right.
Because a lot of times we're looking for people that we want to show off on Instagram and do something and blah, 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 versus actually being with the person who's the best fit for us.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my
Preach.
nugget on that.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Next question. Next question. I'm so glad you've decided to do a podcast on this topic. I have been struggling with this for so long, and I'm honestly annoyed with people at this point. I'm 32 years old and have held a high position in the government since I was 22. Some of my friends and family didn't seem to accept that I was able to navigate an actual career at such a young age, all while also being a full-time single mother. I started my business at 28, and even more people started to act differently around me. They shunned me off, gossip about how I thought I was this and that, how I didn't need help because I make enough money. Everything always seemed and still seemed to be centered around my money. I don't talk about my money to anybody at all because I've always dreaded being treated this way. Most of my family and friends are not where I am in life, and I understand that. I've always been helpful in offering ideas, resources to help them become better. I've always been told that I'm a very humble person. I don't always talk about my wins because it seems like people shrink at the sound of my glory. I know that some of my glow up shows in my lifestyle, maybe even in some photos online, but I can't be happy for myself in peace. During conversations, some friends would always make it their business to one up me or let me know that they have things going on for them. I love celebrating others, especially those I'm close to, and I don't understand why they must always make sure that I know what they have going on. I give praises to my loved ones every chance I get without expecting to receive that in return. But I don't like the feeling of people who are close to me uh, only prying for personal information just so they can copy me or try to compete with me in occupation, entrepreneurship, motherhood, material things. At this point, I feel alone. I don't want to share anything at all because I feel like they'll start competing again. I thought friendships and family should be based on building one another, not competing. I've even had people steal my online content, outfits, words, etc., without crediting me and passing it off as their own. I rarely say much about these things because I don't like confrontation. However, I've had to straight cut people off because of their competitiveness. How do I navigate building genuine friendships without feeling like I can't be open, share my victories, and explore life without feeling like they'll be um, in competition with me? What do you think,
Hmm.
Ayana?
That was a lot.
Because I don't feel the same way about this question as I felt about the first one.
No, I don't either.
I do yeah, okay, because I do feel like I mean, I could totally see, you know, somebody being 22 years old,
Mhm.
knocking it out the park, single full-time mom, kinda everybody probably bet against
Right.
her, and she popping.
Right.
You're definitely popping.
Mhm.
And what that does to people is looking at you feels to them like
They lost.
a mirror of
Mhm.
failures. Right. Exactly.
Mhm.
Like you to them, you were someone who was not supposed to win,
Mm.
right? And you had a lot of excuses. You had a lot of genuine excuses that you could have made for your life. I'm a single mom, I'm young, and you did it.
Right.
And so I do feel like there is a bit of that with people where they look at you, they look at your life, and it's like, oh gosh, her win is my loss because I have made up these excuses for why I haven't succeeded and she hasn't. And I do think sometimes people can feel bad about that.
Mhm. Mhm. I do too. And you know what? And I think that a part of feeling like you've reached a point where you can be proud of what you've done and accomplished and everything, a part of that can affect other people, but sometimes the right people, it won't. You know, it just won't.
Mhm.
And don't I would say don't let how you think people perceive your wins stop you from being as open as you want to be, sharing your victories, but you might just need to be more selective about who you share with and who you're open with.
Mhm.
And kind of have like your core trusted group of people who maybe are winning just as much as you are. So, you share a win, they share the win, y'all all win. Like everybody's clinking
Mhm.
glasses.
Mhm.
And it's good times. And maybe some of the people like family members, right? Like, although a lot of our friends are like our family, we can't exactly replace family like we can,
Mhm.
switch up our friendships and things. But a lot of
Yeah.
your friendships may need to be reevaluated, and not even from a do I need
Mhm.
to cut you off, but just like maybe how do I need to approach this friendship? I know you mentioned something about
Yeah.
championing other people and cheering them on. Maybe there's opportunities for you to pour into them a little bit more because, like you said, Myleik, maybe they were looking at you like, how did she win? So maybe they want to know a little bit of what your
Yeah.
secret sauce is, and maybe you let them in on it, even if it's just hard work or
Mhm.
curiosity, or you spend X amount of time reading books or X amount of time listening to podcasts, whatever it is. Maybe a little small offering will help to shift how they interact and engage with you. And as far as family members, that gets a little bit tricky because they're around, they're there in some
Mhm.
capacity or another. Maybe it's just more so trying to deal with the relationships in a way that feels healthy for you. And when I say that, I mean also just really looking at what's actually going on, you know? Like sometimes
Mhm.
there's a season in somebody's life where they may have deflected something on you, but it had nothing to do with you,
Mhm.
you know? So maybe
Right.
it's more so just like thinking about like how is this person's life going right now? Because we've seen all the reasons that your life is going great. But, there might be
Yeah.
people around you who they don't feel like their life is going so great. And one of the things I always think about is I like to be of support to somebody rather than tearing them down, people that I love and that I care about, because I would hate for somebody to be in such a bad way, in such a bad position, and they're wearing this armor and I didn't know it. And then something tragic
Mhm.
happens, like they do something tragic to
Yeah.
themselves. And it's like, man, I wish I would have been a little bit more in tune or paid attention to some of the little things, because people do give you bits and pieces of what's really happening with them sometimes. So, I love that you're so accomplished for your age, and I think that that's
Me
awesome.
too.
Like clap it up for you.
Yeah. Please do.
But
Yeah, and I hope that you don't I hope that you also, the fine print, of you succeeding like that is the gossip, is the light
mhm,
conversation. It kind of comes with it. So
yeah,
it's like I know when I go around, some family, like I ain't gonna say what particular because I don't know who listening. And if you listening, I'm not talking about you.
right.
But, there will be times where, people be like, ooh, how much was that?
Mm,
And you just like, and the thing about it is like sometimes, even though you may want to share or you feel proud of yourself that you could afford that, is sometimes just for self preservation and preservation of the relationship, just be like, I don't even
mm.
know.
Yeah.
I'd be like, I don't even know.
Mhm.
Like, girl, I don't even know. Like,
And-
in fact, I think somebody gave that to
Yes.
me. Like,
And move past it
whatever.
real quick.
It's
Yeah.
move. Yeah, and just like, a lot of times, so it's like, I'll be like, "Ooh, that's nice. How much was that?" It's like people say that, get in my car. It's like, "Oh, you got a Tesla. How much?" Like, honestly, I don't even know.
Yeah.
Like, because the way they set it up, you make these random payments, and by the time you get there, I have no
Right.
idea,
Right.
and just leave it at that because, it just that's just what kind of like succeeding. That's what succeeding when people don't expect you to looks like.
Mm.
You
Mhm.
know, when you're a young woman of color, and that is something that I, have experience with, people don't like, I pull up to valet, I have constantly people asking me how much my car was. And I'm just like, they're on the internet.
Right.
It's
You
not a
can go price
secret.
it out if you
Like
really wanted to.
you can go
Yeah.
price it out, or, people, they look at you and they don't expect for somebody that looks like us to
Right.
win. And so it's just, and then there's this other part where it's pretty freaking amazing and kind of cool. And some people are just like
Mhm.
shocked,
Mhm.
And how sometimes when people are shocked, they can't help like what they're thinking just kind of
Yep.
spills out. Like, dang,
Yeah.
girl, because I might be like, you popping like I'm like I'm looking like you've been working for the government for a decade since 22. How did you even know
To get a job at the
to
government. Yeah,
apply?
to apply. Yeah. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
So I even could be the same person. Like I could even be like, wow,
Mhm.
kind of like,
Mhm.
oh wow,
And
I'm
and
curious.
it's good.
How much was
Yeah,
that?
it's good to pat yourself on the back sometimes too. And I think, like having that confidence that, I have done some awesome things. I've achieved some great things. It doesn't you don't have to walk around feeling like, oh, like I don't want to say this in front of so and so. Like you said, maybe curb the way you would answer certain things just because you're aware
Mhm.
of who you're around. But at the same time, having that confidence, maybe it's too much for some people to handle. And like I said before, you don't associate yourself with those people then. Politely start to distance yourself.
Mhm.
It's not that you have to be, that's the other thing people don't really realize. Is sometimes distancing yourself doesn't mean that you have to be mad. You don't have to be ugly. You don't have to have some big long soliloquy before you peace out. It could just be like, I see you when I see you. I speak to you when I speak to you. There is no love lost, but I just maybe don't interact with you the way that I used to. It's fine. You know,
Mhm.
I still got love
It's
for
totally
you,
fine.
whatever. But that's just sometimes these are just the way that life goes, these instances, and there's nothing that we could do to stop it. It's just things that we got to deal with. And like I said, congratulations to you for finding success in your life, and don't, dumb it down too much for other people.
Yes, yes. And so she did add that she has a group of friends who seem to be supportive and have been for the most part. She offered to have a mastermind session with a few, as she knows they've asked to help them with a few business ideas. I want to do it, but I'm slightly terrified that it will become a competition kind of thing. And I just will say, before we move on to the next question, is that offer
Yeah,
that up.
agree.
Offer up what you
Agree.
have to offer up to your friend, and don't worry
And
about what
control
happens,
the
because
environment. Don't let it become competitive.
Mhm.
You know, make it so
Yeah,
positive.
yeah, we're
Yeah,
not doing
that to
that.
be competitive, you would
Yeah,
look stupid.
yeah, it's right. Like, come on, like we helping
Hmm.
each other, and I always say I want to create my own competition. You
Hmm.
know what I'm saying? I want to create my own competition in the sense that, like, then I know, like I said in the beginning of this podcast, competition makes the category
Right.
viable, right? So it's like if we all kind of compete against each other and we all winning and we keeping the other real, other people
Right.
out, then we
Right.
win. Then we all win. So it's like if we all selling, if we got the whole bread aisle on lock, you know, I got the cinnamon raisin, you got the blueberry, you got the whole grain. Then we got
Yep.
each other,
Yep. Mhm.
So that's the way that I like that. Okay, our final question. She says, okay, deep sigh. Lord, so much. I I love y'all. I am a first time mom. My baby girl is 7 months, and I'm now a stay at home mom while her dad works for an ad agency. Although we're not married, we've fallen into very traditional roles. I'm home all day with the baby. I have dinner ready by the time he's home. I make his plate, do the laundry, clean, etc. 2 or 3 years ago, I thought being a stay at home mom was the life, but this complete life change has come with some emotions that I was not anticipating. He and I are very creative. He is a graphic artist, and I have a fashion background and also create content via YouTube and podcast. What I'm noticing is that I cannot celebrate his wins without later on sulking and thinking I'm not doing enough. I even find myself getting defensive when he offers to help me with projects because it makes me feel like my own creativity and ideas are being slighted. Since we're both creative, it would be ideal to work together and be great, but internally I feel myself competing and trying to prove I can still be great although I'm at home. I know being a stay-at-home mom does not hinder me from being great, but a shift has happened psychologically for me because I'm not making my own money and I can't seem to pinpoint why I can't get over that. It's not just with him either. I've had to mute friends on IG and take social media breaks because I can't celebrate people like I know I should. I started to feel like my success would never measure up to the people around me. No, this is not how I should be thinking, talking to, and about myself. But I'm just being honest. Why am I all of a sudden feeling this heavy burden to compete with those around me just because I'm not working? I know you can understand that I'm actually doing the hardest work anyone can do by being with the little one 24/7, but for some reason the money piece is throwing me off and I feel like I have a point to prove. Help. So you probably want me to do
Girl,
this
yeah,
one.
because I don't have any kids and I feel like she's in a new mom space similar to you. And I
Hmm.
don't know much about
Yeah.
postpartum and whatnot, but I feel like there's
Hmm.
things, emotions that can creep in
Hmm.
that just may disappear and go away one
Yes.
day, but it's the timing as to why.
Yeah. I know. Yeah. Yeah. I thought about this. Is like I can't completely relate to this letter because I don't have the luxury of being able to stop working. I can relate to feeling sort of slowed
Right.
down some, right? So it's like I'll see people like new podcast. You on there like you on there like I got a new podcast every Thursday at 3 o'clock. I'm like you know.
Two different lives. Yeah.
I'm like
Right.
shoot. I can't, I genuinely cannot do the podcasting as quickly as I used to. And sometimes that frustrates me because I feel like there's all these new dope people coming out with podcasts and I used to have a stake in the game and sometimes I feel like I don't anymore. And it's like and you know what? I know it's completely unreasonable because I get my reports and people are still downloading my podcast as if I'm recording
Right.
them every week. So there's that. I think sometimes it's in our head because we know what we used to be able to do and we just can't do it anymore. And something that I have kind of been dealing with as a new mom is really like I've been struggling with my
Mm.
new self, this new identity. Like, sometimes people kind of wrote me and commented about like, oh, everything is just all baby, baby, baby. And it's like there's a part of me that's like, anything that I do that's new, I take this deep dive. I'm gonna read books. That's just how I am about everything. Okay. It's like if I can get a cut under my foot, I'm going to do that. So it's like no surprise that I have this baby and I'm like, okay, I need a different high chair. I need to do this. I need to do that. And then it becomes all consuming and it's like, oh my God, am I gonna fall off? Am I even still creative? Do people even look to me as a person? Like, why am I viewing motherhood as a handicap? You know? Um, and so it's all of this struggle. And so I think if I could offer anything is that if you are no longer feeling the traditional roles, you need to have a conversation with
Ding,
your
ding,
partner
ding.
ASAP about that.
Yep.
You know, I used to feel like I wanted to be that person. Like I wanted to be the superwoman of what I saw my mom doing. Like my mom worked and my mom did all the laundry and did all the grocery shopping. And it was just like, if she did it, I definitely could. And the truth is that I can't. You know what I mean? I can't.
Right. You got to
You know? And I remember my mom saying to me, yeah. I remember my mom saying to me, like, oh, you know, you're gonna struggle to like find anybody because you're not little Miss like Mary Poppins. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm gonna be single because that's not my ministry. Right. So, you know, the thing about it is like if you've been at home all day with the baby, that's just a different job. And you don't have to like make plates and do laundry and clean and all that kind of stuff. So I was just, you know, you guys haven't fallen into these roles. Like you've taken on this role, or you probably believe that that's who you should be. And it's just like, you know, I don't make any
Right.
plates,
Yeah, I
period.
don't either. I'm not about that.
I'm not make,
Yeah.
I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. No. And you
Yep.
know, that's just not who I am. So it's just like, if you don't want to do the laundry anymore, it's like, yes, you are at home with the baby, but that is very much a full-time job. You know, how can we split these things up so that I'm not
Yeah.
losing my mind? You know, so it's like outsourcing some things. I don't do the cleaning. So it's just like, I don't know how you want to raise your daughter, but I think it's okay if you build in some personal time, you know? So there's a little setup. I have a full-time nanny, but even I'm ready to get like, I'm recording this podcast once again. It's like, because I'm home, I get a text like Noah's hungry. It's like, he can have a bottle, you know, it's like, I can't. So that makes me want for him to get out of the house a little bit, you know, and it's okay to be like, I want to be separated from my kid for a little bit of time. And so I found a place that I'm actually going to call for him next week. And it's like, they do 2 days a week, 4 hours a day. It's like kind of how you start to almost like transition them to start getting used to getting out the house, you know, and it's not so expensive so that you're not, because you aren't working and you feel like you're not making your own money. It's like, can we build this into the forecast? Can we build this into the family? And then from there, maybe you use those 4 hours, those 8 hours a week. Those are your times to be creative, to create things, to podcast, to connect, to fill yourself up on that again. But I think that like sometimes it's difficult for you to kind of celebrate his wins and celebrate him because you kind of mad that you doing all this stuff that you really don't want to do. You know, it's like, I don't want to hear about what you did at work and I'm making plates and doing laundry and cooking and cleaning and all that.
Conversation about what your roles will be, because I've always said, I will not just be Susie homemaker. Even if I'm at home all day, you will help me with some of this stuff around here. You will cook. You will bathe some kids. You will do the things that I do. Because this needs there, but that's the way that I want things set up. And my partner will understand that because we will have had that discussion, that conversation. And I'm not saying that this woman has not had that discussion, but if you have not, that might be something to discuss before it gets out of hand, you know?
And that's what I'm saying. And this is the thing, even if we have in my relationship, he and I have like some clear understanding about like, you know, I don't cook his dinner. I cook sometimes, and sometimes he's vegetarian. I'm not. Sometimes I make vegetarian meals. Sometimes I don't, but he understands that he has to be responsible for feeding himself on a day-to-day basis. But there have been times where there are some things that maybe we didn't discuss, right? And especially after having a child, you know, the other day I was like, well, what you're not going to do is sit and take a nap right now. You're not going to be on the, you're not going to sit here and take a nap on the couch and your girl has not slept in 6 months. Okay. Or whatever. And it's like, sometimes you just have to say, he's like, well, what do you want me to do?
Something.
I'm like, the dishes.
Let's get it cracking. Come on. Something.
Something.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that, like but I think that I think the biggest thing that I get in this letter is to go ahead and have the
Yes.
conversation with your husband and let him know how you feel about the traditional roles, and you might find that he might be like, "I don't
Mhm.
need you to cook for me anyway. I don't
Mhm.
need you to make my plate." You know, you might be shocked at what he may not need you to do, but
Assume the role.
you've taken on all of this because you assume the role, and a lot of us have done that because I did it because I watched my mom do it, and then I thought to myself, no wonder
Right.
why she
She had
was
too
not
much on her
happy. Like,
plate.
who want to
Yeah.
be doing
My
all
mom is a
who
completely different person now
too much?
versus when
And
I was a kid. Like she's super likable. Not that she wasn't when I was a kid, but
yes,
I'm like, oh, it's like a whole new side of her. She's like, oh, you want to go to the store? You want to go shopping? You want to do this? I'm
yeah,
like, as a kid, you never wanted to do anything. Guess what? She had 2 kids that were a year apart. She had 4 kids total. Of course, she didn't want
yeah,
to go anywhere. Of course, she didn't want to do anything. She was tired. She was tired. So, just I think the biggest
yeah,
thing is to have a
yeah.
conversation with your partner and express where you're coming from and try and come up with some solutions as to how you can start making yourself feel better and what his role can be in helping you to feel better and get back to maybe feeling some of your old self.
Which yes, exactly. And one of my really good friends, her advice to me was, because I was like ready to be all strict. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe you're doing this. Or you would actually do this, or you would do that. And she was like, you know what, Miley? Happy mom, happy baby. And that's
Mm,
the whole thing. Happy mom, happy family. So talk to your partner, because I think you said you weren't married. And even if you were married, I think it's like roles are roles, and married or not married, if you assumed all these things, you don't have to do them. I don't even think you have to feel bad that, like, oh, because I was in a situation once where I was living with someone and I wasn't working, and
mm,
I felt like, oh my God, I have to prove myself. Like
mhm.
I have to earn my keep.
Right.
Um,
I remember
and I
that.
was just, you remember that,
Yep.
and you know what, and I made myself miserable,
Hmm.
and you don't have to do that. It's like, yes, he is working, but you are also doing some incredibly invaluable work, and a lot of times, if you could trade keeping a baby all day with actually going to work, most people want to go to work. It's like, so you're doing some really really hard work that if there was a dollar on it, it would be far more than what your partner is bringing to the house. So it's like, it's not just the cost of daycare. It is like the love that you're pouring into this child, the support that you have by being there, the sacrifice that you're making for your kid. You know what I mean? Like, this is a part, like, you're sacrificing right now, and this is the side of sacrifice.
Yep. And that's
It's like
priceless right there because a
it's
lot of
it's
people choose
priceless.
not to sacrifice for their children, but we won't get into
That is true.
that.
Yes. So, um, thank you, Ayana. Okay, so before we get out of here, and we've been kikiing, this is probably one of the longest podcasts I've ever done because we're friends and we just in a full kiki session. Tell us every place that we can find you and everything that you have going on.
Okay, most notably where I hang out on social is Instagram, and that's at Switch Pivot or Quit. And you can find everything linked at switchpivotorquit.com. I also have a little something special for you guys. It's an accountability and inspiration journal, and you can download that,
Ooh,
yes, and get your hands on that by going to switchpivotorquit.com/myleak. And be sure that, shameless plug, that you look out for my new venture, which is Maisie Media, and you can go to maisiemedia.com. That's MAYZIE media.com, and sign up on the mailing list so that you can hear about more awesome podcasts that are going to be produced specifically for women like us, ambitious, courageous, just badass women. And that's going to be launching in September. So make sure you look out for that as well.
awesome. Thank you guys so much. Ayana is like my true girl. Hope we didn't cut up too much. But
Right.
as always, thank you for listening. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.